Good afternoon. I was hoping we would be joined by Ms. Apurva. We'll miss her, but it was great to listen to the Chief Minister's vision for sports in the morning, and hopefully we'll participate in that. The topic for us is private-public partnership for promotion of sports. Simple topic, but often it's good to define what we mean by private-public partnership. I was hoping Ms. Apurva would do it for us, but we'll park it for a minute. The other thing is, what is promotion of sports? I am sure each of us has a different definition of promotion of sports. So I'd like to hear from each of the panelists about that, then come back and sort of discuss it further. Before that, let me request Mr. Ankur Jain, who's been in the education space, who's grown talent. If you could tell us what in your mind a public-private partnership means, whether it's in sports or whether it's any other domain, then I would request the other panelists to speak about what does promotion of sports mean, and we'll come back and answer a few questions.
Well, I just rephrase the question, or maybe remind just again, you asking me to define what I understand about the private and public partnership. Well, if you go by the dictionary meaning, it would mean that the government and private sector is coming together, working together. But what comes to my mind immediately is the government is also a public entity, and ultimately the governments are framed by us. But yes, if we go deeper, what we understand is there was a mindset some time back when everything is left to the government. The nation's security is left to the government. Job creation is left to the government, or a sports facility creation is left to the government. In the morning, we were talking about the China, Australia, US. They are generally considered to be the nations where a lot of sports participation is coming. And when we look at Olympics or Commonwealth or multiple international level games, we see a majority of the medals, participation, competition going into selective 4-5 countries. The Australia is in the lead front, US, China are definitely the ones. So what I do understand over here is that if from India we want to take sports into a more serious efforts, we have to change the perspective it is looked at. Today, ultimately, I ask you, at what time in your life you decided that you want to get into journalism, or you want to do something in the media, or this kind of a profession? 23, 24. At the age of 23, 24. But at your younger age, at the age of 10, 12, 14, 15, what were your aspirations were? So that's the time where generally, all of us decides that what we want to do. And it is around the 10 years of age when this decision starts coming into the human's life, that what is it we want to do. And if we want to do something good in the field of education, we have to look forward that we seed this plant of sports loving into the children's mind when they are at this age, facilitate more sports. But maybe I have diverted your question. So your question was that how do public and private work together? So in this case, as I'm representing a school, I would say a school has to take this responsibility. Today, when we look back, we see when it comes to making a career, schools take up the responsibilities and nurture children in the field of science, technology. When we see where is India, in what all fields the India is in the forefront. Let me ask all of you, in what all fields India is in the forefront across the globe in different nations? Well, maybe sports wouldn't probably figure out in your mind. Maybe IT would come. Indian companies, Infosys, TCS, etc. They have done a good work in terms of IT development. Today, the leading CEOs of big IT companies, including Sundar Pichai of Google, Nadella of Microsoft, they mostly are Indians. So in India, the education, computer science, technology has gone deep into it, but probably sports have not gone. So request this forum that, yes, please do take schooling seriously and help us in seeding this sports seed into the mind of the children.
Fantastic. Thanks. I'll come back to you. Mr. Baskaran, you've been a world-class athlete from India. You made India proud. You continue to be involved in sports today. But like I said, many of us would define promotion of sports differently. How would you, A, define promotion of sports? And in your experience, what is government good at and what is public enterprise good at?
Well, first of all, I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to I go back to my playing days, sports and pastime, now Sportstar. I was fortunate to have on the cover many times in sports and pastime, winning national 6 times. And when the Sportstar started, I was the first Indian to do the marketing style of Adidas on the front cage covered by Sportstar. So that's that's how I have plenty of relations with the Hindu groups, both as a player, both as an administrator. And I still travel with them quite a lot. When this subject came to me, so I was so happy that nobody had done it before. I understand they have done it in Northeast and then a few months back in Trivandrum. And this one is quite big. In fact, it's a metropolitan cities where we almost have wonderful icons today here, both as an administrator. Just imagine a big icon, N.C. Nivasan. In spite of his different schedules, he was here in the morning. And of course, our CM was doing a keynote. And coming back to this beautiful conclave, the subject is that private and public. What do you mean by that? Well, in my first era, when I started playing, I think there was nothing in store as a marketing style or a sponsor style. I remember when I went for the first camp to India in 1969, when I was in the Loyola College, I had to take 2 broken sticks, bind it, tape it, and play and get selected for India. So that's how your private partnership was not there those days. The second era, there was some kind of momentum was there where India was doing so well in hockey, and of course, in my time, there were only 2 teams in the flight. One is hockey team, athletics, and maybe few wrestlers. The total number of athletes should be about not more than 35. So that's how we are not being taken care by the extra sponsors who could have done lots. They were there, but we didn't prize it on. But later, after 96 Atlanta Olympics, I thought, because I had been to, as a player, 2 Olympics, as a coach, 2 Olympics, as an observer, 3 Olympics. So almost 8 Olympics into my kitty. So I've seen the best and the worst of any Indian athletes, right from Milkha Singh, though it was quite aged, right from Balbir Singh, and of course Jain, I have not played, I shook hands with him, taken photos with him. So that's my age barrier. But I've been in youth also, many a times. Today I saw wonderful youth here. And a school chief is here. My personal thing is that this is a sports forum to encourage sports in a large way. There are a lot of government coming into sports, but I think the government is only a policy making decision. They have to do it, they're doing it, that's it. They can't go beyond that. They can't win any Olympics in that policy. But a private partnership, yes, they can win. They can promote sport in a big way if it's going to rural areas. You know, the rural areas is such an important base for Indian sports. See, I'm not going to touch any other country because I've traveled widely seen all coaching systems, seen all the players coming up, but India is the best talent available but we never have any phenomenal advertisement on the boys. Morning I saw our Paralympic champion. I had gone to his house. Why I had gone to Natarajan's house, a cricket player. I had gone to an hockey player, just came back from Asia Cup, bronze medal, something disaster. So this is where the public sponsors, I have to tell that very strongly, it has to go to the districts. Each district is not the question of money part of it. Each district should have a wonderful infrastructure where any kid can go and crawl and play whatever she wants. Mariappan cannot come to Chennai and do training every day here. Natarajan cannot come to TNC and train every year here. There are so many other players who are still in school but don't have 3 meals a day. So my request is that when the sponsors comes in, these kind of enclave will help everybody. When you win, you get a sponsor. To me, other way around. When you pick up, you must have a sponsor. When you pick up a game, I know about, in 1971, I was in East Germany, Leipzig. So we were staying in a camp, it's like NIS Patiala. So I saw few hockey players and few rowers. And with the broken English, I was asking, what is this kind of camp? The first thing the coach said, these are the parents' houses. I said, whose parents? I said, the identified athletes of Germany, the parents are living here happily. The reason is, the kid will perform well when the parents are happy. In India, I have seen my own eyes as a coach, as a player. In Patiala, one letter comes, 2 days the boy does not play. In 80s, money order does not come, 3 days he doesn't go for practice. And one letter comes, he's asking the coach that I have to go home. You know why? Sir, my mother I have not paid electricity bill. So these are the downfall of our sports about 10, 15 years back. That's the reason I'm telling that the districts which have handful of fantastic talent, if the parents are taken care at the younger age. No, I'm not really bothered about education of it. I'm not really bothered about somebody going into medicine and getting into doctor and all. How many Olympians in the world are PhD? Tell me. Tell me, Usain Bolt, which college he went? Has he not ruled the country? Has he not ruled the world 10 seconds? 3 times, 16 years. He didn't go to any college. So I think these are the things where the partnership of having sponsors should definitely hit the talented boy, parents to go there and tell the parent, the child is mine. Instead of performing at the age of 18, the boy will perform at the age of 16. So this is where the difference between a sportsman living in rural areas and not being identified properly. It not means it's identified, but then it takes too long to grow. Either he has to go to Bangalore, either he has to go to Gwalior or to Patiala. That's it. Why not I do everything in district as in Jamaica? Usain Bolt did not go to travel anywhere to go for do training. Fortunate to see him training at Jamaica a few years back. It is a small hut, tented house, and only training and food. The parents have been taken care. So these, I mean very strongly that India has got talent. The kids have sports background. If the parents are taken care, I know many parents are here. If the parents are taking care, not to worry about the education, please go and stand on the podium. We will take care of it. Any company comes in, it should be 100 companies ready to do it if we identify a talent and give it to them.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope your message is heard by everybody who's invested in sports and everybody who's interested in sports, and that's all of us. Now, Saumil and Aman, both of you do extremely important work in the domain of sports, but to my mind, you operate at different ends of the spectrum. And I think the debate is not about either or, it is about and. Because one needs to create sports grassroots up, but at the same time, one needs champions who inspire us. So it's about sports as an activity, and it's also about performance. So let me go to Saumil first. Saumil, your thoughts on what does sports promotion mean to you?
So, first of all, thank you, Sportstar and the group, for having me here, pleasure to be part of this panel. To your question, I think promotion of sports to me means promotion of sports, not promotion of winning medals. So I think there's a big distinction in promotion of sports and winning medals. I think what's happened, unfortunately, is the winning medals has completely overshadowed promotion of sports. And we assume those two are the same. Again, there's not either or, but there's also not only one. I think the rhetoric that has to change is the fact that the other also exists and is important. And because it's not as glamorous, it's not as flashy, you don't get podiums, you don't get chief ministers coming, it doesn't get the attention it deserves. And to connect to the public-private piece, in my mind, the public-private essentially is the government saying there are some public goods I need to provide. I do not have the time, money, or expertise to provide it. Dear Mr. Private, please come, let's partner. But that public-private partnership should be for the larger public, not for a very small percentage of elite athletes. Not only for them, let's say. I don't want to say it should not be for them, but currently all discussions about the elite athletes. We also have to have public-private partnerships on all kids playing, which happens in schools. Right now, as we speak, I think the governor of Tamil Nadu has talked about 100 schools where they could introduce sports inside schools, and they're looking for CSR partners. To me, that's the classic public-private partnership, where all kids play, and automatically you'll have a funnel for the top of the funnel. I hope that helps.
Perfect, thanks. Makes sense, but to create that infrastructure and for people to believe in it, for people to see hope in it, we need icons, right? And there's an interesting analogy about, I think Abhinav Bindra recently spoke in one of our forums, and he said there's a strong correlation between sporting nations and medal winners. Look at the countries that are the most sporting. Incidentally, they happen to be medal winners. So to me, both are important, and but I agree with you, we tend to neglect the other. Aman, you have been doing phenomenally good work as head of partnerships with the JSW Olympic program. Talk us through what does sport mean to your group and what it means to you. Why are you part of this program?
Sure. Thank you, and good evening, everyone, and thank you to the Hindu group and Sportstar for hosting this very important conclave. I think, I just want to add to what Saumil said. I think he's absolutely bang on. The efforts that need to happen, we talk a lot about having a sporting culture and generating a sporting culture. It has to happen at the base of the pyramid. I mean, it has to be top down as well as bottom up. A lot of the attention right now is, like he said, because of the glamour on the people who are working at the top, and our organization is part of that. So I take that absolutely on face value. I think the one distinction that I would like to make, and since you asked the question, what is the public-private partnership, or how can it help in the promotion of sports? I think it's very simple. I think the fact of the matter is, like Sir mentioned, India is a massive country. There is absolutely no dearth of talent in the country. The idea is, how can these two entities come together, bring in their expertise in areas to really, for the greater good. The greater good is, of course, sport developing in India. When the kind of work that an organization like JSW Sports does is not meant to rival what the government is doing. It's meant and it's always been meant to complement what the government is doing. At the top levels of sport, there's the 5.1% that makes the difference. That's where organizations like us come in. And the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, when an athlete wins a medal, the athlete doesn't win a medal for JSW or for the government. He or she wins the medal for India. So that's really the driving force behind everything that we do at JSW Sports. We look at sport very much as a tool towards nation building. And that's really the attitude that everything we do, has. So I think that's really our way of focusing on it. And yeah, and I think there's a lot of, we can discuss this, but I think I'd just like to point out that, the government has been doing a lot with, especially on the CSR front, with the Companies Act now making it mandatory for corporates to invest up to 2% of profits in CSR, and sport and promotion of sport being a part of that. I think that has opened up, a huge opportunity for the development and promotion of sports, as Saumil would be able to, add on. And I think that's something that holds us in good stead from whatever we've been seeing over the last 5 or 10 years. It's definitely moving to the right direction. I think that's what I would leave it with. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Baskaran. We speak a lot about infrastructure, access to infrastructure. But in my mind, infrastructure is only part of the solution. And infrastructure necessarily is, to a large part, infrastructure that makes sports accessible to everybody is in the government's domain. But I think expertise lies with people who know the subject, with domain expertise. It lies with the private sector in terms of some design imagination. To that extent, while infrastructure is a government domain, structure and design should be with people who understand the sports in the private sector. Your thoughts and experiences on that?
Well, I go back to the previous group of people like Vasant Bharadwaj and then Sarath Kamal and Satyan spoke. It's a wonderful session, the best I saw. When you talk about the infrastructure, yes, it's definitely a government, in India as such, because every state has got funds to promote the stadia. And a few years back, we had the national games coming in and talking about the national games to be conducted so that we have about 35, 36 games can be played in one state. That's wonderful idea. But when you come out and ask about the coaching and expertise of the usage of the ground, I think that's where we need to have a big jump there, because we have a ground everywhere. Like we saw, that's why I said this enclave is wonderful, because we touched a technical point where we had Bharat Arun, we had other, Ramki talking about the science and Armugam talking about the biomechanics and all those things. I think this is a teamwork. Just having infrastructure, yes, I don't think so. But there are so many things are digitalized now, because a GPS, other things can be working well with the coaches. And for that, the coaches should be well equipped and trust that is going to help the people. Because the coach trust is very important. There was a subject, somebody, Ramki was telling about, Indian team at 2012 Olympics, so only players played 4 minutes. Yes, I was against it, but other countries played. Again, it's a coach's decision to accept the analytical lookout for the coach to help. But this has to start at the young age. What is missing in the Indian sport is that everything is only available for the sports people, but there's football or cricket or hockey, it's all at the higher level, 19 years and above. But why this, with the digital and the information technology is so good in the world from India, why that all the schools start all these things at the age of 14 years? We only hire or recruit PE teachers. Yes, that's a basic. But why not we have a professionals in the school to talk about these aspects, which is going to make him a champion. That's very important. When we spend money, when the infrastructure is there, if you go to any stadium, I'm not criticizing anybody, we will not see any medical department in the stadium. Somebody is injured, then he has to be called and take an ambulance. Why not? And doctor club, doctor team should be there in the, I suppose JSW has got everything there because they have found that they've been 10 years in this business, so they must have corrected everything there. Same with Edusports also. I was with them for 10 years. And best is, please have a professional people at the school level, which will gain a lot of confidence for the parents to put anybody in the sport. Then, as you say, participation different, standing on the podium different. So, when they come to the podium level, infrastructure, a team of all the analytical people you spoke about, 4 to 5 subjects in this enclave, they all form a team. I was just telling about a few years back, in Mumbai, Champions Trophy in cricket, and Australia won the cup. I saw 15 players and 15 support staff. So 30-member team. So this is what the school should have. I mean, this should at the youth you should have, and we should have a knowledgeable expertise on this. Why not the universities also can start, promoting, along with the PET line, the expertise on these kind of analytical, digital, computer, biomechanics at the school level. Why not have an undergraduate there? I find, a lot of things in the school, in the colleges, after that, BA 10 classes, BCom 10, BBA 10, but there's nothing in sports. Why not the sports graduation should come in that? Why not BSc sports? So I think that's where the answer is. If you give them, well, otherwise everybody is PET and he doesn't know where to go beyond some subject. If you're thinking of a bigger, commitment.
Thank you. Saumil, I'll come back to you. And you spoke about making sports accessible to all versus access to a few, or in sometimes increased access to a select few or elite few. You have been working in this area, and you have identified schools as a catchment area. So 2 questions I would request for a 2-minute response. How do you think governments can help further this cause? Second, do you think there's a role for traditional sports, which are part of our culture? Is there a case for reviving them at school level, because they teach us life as well as sports?
So thanks for that. Let me take the second question first. I think traditional sports is fantastic, not because of what you said, because traditional Indian sports require no equipment. It requires no space. You can play anywhere. And that's the beauty of traditional Indian sports. All other sports mandate equipment and space. Basketball court has to be so much, football field has to be so much, and suddenly the whole thing goes for a toss. So I think Indian sports are fantastic and we should push that back. I would also extend that logic to say, look at the current sports and be prepared to redesign it for limited space. Why should football be on a 110 by 70 meter pitch? All of us grew up playing, I'm not sure how many of us actually played in a full field, how many times, right? Most of us grew up playing in corners. So that's to your first question. On the school side, unfortunately, the reality of urban development and planning, and this is true for rural as well, is that we just don't have play spaces for kids to play. It's as simple as that. So the only place where kids show up regularly, which has safe space, where there's some adult supervision, there's some time, is a school. There's no other, if you think of time in a child's life in a week, there's no other time where 35 kids of my size, my age, broadly my height, weight, socioeconomic category show up together. The school solves all of these problems. Therefore, in our view, there's no other answer but schools. And therefore, public-private should be getting private partners into public schools so that more government kids play and use that space.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Aman, a slightly unrelated question, but we often talk about infrastructure, right? And look at how other industries have solved for infrastructure. Like during COVID, if you couldn't get students to classroom, the classroom went to students' homes. There's so many games where infrastructure can be mobile. It needn't be a stadium, right? Why can't we take our games to non-school environments in rural India. So your thoughts on that, and if this is something that's on your company's radar in days to come?
No, so I mean, when it comes to our organization, our current focus is largely on the, on the top level of the pyramid, like we've discussed already. But no, I think absolutely, I think, we've had panels here on technology and about how technology can be used to really broad-based sports. And I think that's something that probably Saumil will be able to, talk more about. But I think there's definitely merit in that, purely because we are also reaching a stage as a society where, a lot of us are, a lot of the kids especially are losing the whole idea or the aspect of really going out and playing. So I think to that extent, forget about medals and the Olympics and everything else. I think just to have a more healthier society, we need to touch upon that aspect. We can get to the medals later, but I think first as a country, with the country which has a huge percentage of its population which is young at the moment, I think from an overall perspective there's a lot of merit and a lot of scope to use technology to bring the fields to the kids in that sense, for sure. Yes.
Thank you. Last question before we wind up to Mr. Ankur Jain. Ideally, in 3 bullet points, you work with students, you work with brilliant minds. They've gone and achieved a lot in academia. 3 things that sports teaches us that science, maths can never ever, or even arts or crafts can never teach us.
Quickly, I just want to take the question with Mr. Baskaran left half answered. You talked about in a college you have 5 sections of BCom, 5 sections of BSc, but when it comes to sports, there are hardly much of a participation. Do we understand why? Why is that case? This is because if you are taking science and you are studying something, maybe you are aspiring to become an engineer. Suppose you don't become an engineer, you still have some options. You can live a healthy life. You want to become a doctor, you aspire for tough competition. Ma'am Apurva is not here, but if you want to be a civil servant, there's a tough UPSC examination and hundreds of students prepare for that. But it's okay, there are few makes it up, but those who don't make it up, they still have some reasonable way of living life. But does that hold good for sports?
Correct.
Yeah, please. I feel the answer is no.
That's more than BCom and MCom. BSc Physiology.
No, my question is,
If you are trying to, channelize the graduation alone and not having an importance for sports in the college, any graduation, only PET is there or MPT is, that's it. So they go as only at a bottom level of, school level, and for them that's enough. They can't go. I'm taking one step, competitive way, where you have an open era for having a sports subject in the colleges, which has got outside the world, except India. Because I said everybody wants to do BCom, MCom, and then reach somewhere else. Why you think BSc sports cannot reach somewhere else?
No, because I wanted to say that in sports, you don't have an opportunity to make a good career for masses.
That's a smaller one. That's we're all living in 10, 20 years behind. People.
Maybe the reason for sports is not careers.
Career.
All of us learned history and biology. None of us, or most of us, are not historians or biologists. It was part of education. Yes. So I think we should think about sports not with a career starting point, but as a part of fundamental education, which probably the question you want to ask, which is, what do you want to learn?
Which is the question I asked. Because
Actually, I was answering because the people who have to be smart enough to do the coaching part of it and the technique part of it, then we need to have a background of sports. Like you're doing for accountancy, we need to have a background of commerce. Okay, now that's also not necessary. Okay, but here in sports, practically you have to talk about any champion or talk about any under-14 champion. You should tell him why I should do that. Why I should do the tennis. Here, most of the girls and boys don't ask. Other countries, all the other girls and boys in other countries, they ask why I should do. Why I should do the workouts. Please explain. That's where our expert is not there. That's what I'm telling. If you have the science into sports graduation, this will help all this expertise to go at a school level and explain why I am telling this to be worked out.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks. We were 5 minutes to go, 4.5 minutes ago, so we are running out of time. Let me just leave a thought for the audience. We had a lovely session on technology a couple of sessions ago. I think what YouTube, among others, has done to the creator ecosystem, if we can use technology, leverage private-public partnerships in the promotion of sports by making sports more accessible, and in the process, making India a sporting nation and create icons in sports worth celebrating, we would have done a great job. Thank you, everybody. We are out of time. The next session is up. Thanks a lot.